It was a cold winter evening in Harlem, New York, on January 27, 1998. The quiet hum of life on the streets gave little hint of the chaos about to unfold inside a small, dimly lit room, a local gambling den hidden away from the public eye. The scent of tobacco hung heavy in the air, and the sound of shuffled cards and clinking coins filled the room. At first glance, it seemed like any other night for the men who frequented this illegal establishment, but soon the routine turned into tragedy. Two men burst into the room, guns drawn. Shouts of panic erupted as players scrambled for cover. One of those men was retired NYPD officer Albert Ward, a frequent presence at the gambling spot. In the confusion, shots rang out, and Ward fell to the floor, fatally wounded. Witnesses, scattered in their fear, gave fragmented accounts of what they saw. Some claimed the shooter was a black man with braids. Others couldn't recall much of anything in the haze of adrenaline. What no one knew that night was that this murder, this act of senseless violence, would lead to one of the most tragic wrongful convictions of our time. A man who had nothing to do with the crime would spend over 2 decades behind bars for it, fighting for the truth to set him free. This is the story of Jon-Adrian Velazquez. Before we delve deeper into this harrowing tale, be sure to subscribe to our channel, Whispers in the Dark. If you're passionate about uncovering stories of injustice and wrongful convictions, hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Now, let's begin. Harlem was no stranger to crime in the late 90s, and on that fateful January night, chaos ruled inside that backroom gambling den. Albert Ward, a retired officer, was killed in what appeared to be a botched robbery. The gunman fled, leaving behind a pool of blood and shattered lives. Witnesses told police they had seen 2 men, both black, and identified the shooter as having braided hair. From these shaky descriptions, a manhunt began. But the investigation would soon take a drastic and tragic turn. Within days, Jon-Adrian Velazquez, a former Marine and father of 2, was arrested. He didn't have braids, nor did he fit the exact description. But that didn't seem to matter. Velazquez had been leading a quiet life, far removed from the world of underground gambling and street crime. He was Latino, not black, and at the time of the crime, he had short hair. Still, he became the primary suspect. Why? Because in cases like this, the desire for quick justice often overwhelms the need for thorough investigation. From the moment of his arrest, Jon-Adrian maintained his innocence. He insisted that at the time of the murder, he was at home, speaking on the phone with his mother. Phone records backed this claim, yet the wheels of injustice had already begun to turn. By the time the case went to trial, Velazquez's fate seemed sealed. The prosecution's case relied heavily on witness testimonies, witnesses who, in truth, were unreliable. One of the key witnesses was a known heroin addict. Another was a drug dealer. These individuals, whose credibility should have been questioned from the start, pointed to Velazquez as the shooter. The most damning moment came during the trial, when one witness, asked to identify the perpetrator in court, mistakenly pointed to a juror instead of Velazquez. It was a mistake that should have raised red flags about the reliability of the witnesses, but the prosecution pressed forward. In their narrative, Velazquez was guilty, and they had no intention of exploring the possibility that they had the wrong man. Despite the lack of solid evidence, Velazquez was convicted in 1999. The jury found him guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Jon-Adrian Velazquez had entered the courtroom an innocent man. He left it condemned to spend the next 2 decades of his life in a maximum security prison. For most people, a conviction like this would be the end of the story. But Jon-Adrian Velazquez wasn't willing to accept a life behind bars for a crime he didn't commit. In 2002, he took matters into his own hands and wrote a letter to Dan Slepian, a producer at Dateline NBC. Velazquez had heard about Slepian's work on another case, one that had led to an overturned conviction. He believed that if anyone could uncover the truth about his situation, it was Slepian. Slepian received the letter, and something about Velazquez's plea struck a chord. What followed was an investigation that spanned nearly a decade. Slepian, along with the team at Dateline, dug deep into the case, uncovering startling inconsistencies. They interviewed witnesses, re-examined evidence, and pieced together a picture that looked very different from the one the prosecution had painted during the trial. Phone records showed that Velazquez had indeed been on the phone with his mother at the time of the murder. Witnesses who had once been confident in their identification began to express doubt. The more Slepian uncovered, the clearer it became that Velazquez had been wrongfully convicted. In 2012, Dateline aired a special on Velazquez's case, bringing national attention to his story. It was a turning point. Celebrities like Sheen and Alpha Wood had lent their voices to the cause, advocating for Jon-Adrian's release. The public rallied behind him, but despite the mounting evidence of his innocence, the legal system moved slowly. For nearly 24 years, Jon-Adrian Velazquez sat in Sing Sing Correctional Facility, hoping for justice. And in August of 2021, that moment finally came. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo granted Velazquez executive clemency. It wasn't a full exoneration, but it was enough to set him free. On September 9, 2021, Jon-Adrian Velazquez walked out of prison, a free man. He had spent 23 years, 8 months, and 7 days behind bars for a crime he didn't commit. His first steps outside Sing Sing were emotional, filled with a mix of relief, joy, and the weight of what had been taken from him. But Velazquez wasn't bitter. Instead, he channeled his energy into something bigger. He became an advocate for criminal justice reform, dedicating his life to preventing others from suffering the same fate. In 2013, he led the formation of Voices from Within, a multimedia initiative aimed at addressing crime and incarceration through the personal stories of those directly impacted. Velazquez believed that education and prevention were key to stopping the cycle of crime that had ensnared so many. His work didn't stop there. He created a series of workshops called Choices, which empowered young people to make healthier, more responsible decisions. Through these programs, Velazquez hoped to steer future generations away from the path that had led to his own wrongful conviction. It was a powerful reminder of the importance of perseverance and hope. Even in the darkest of circumstances, Jon-Adrian Velazquez's story is one of tragedy, hope, and ultimate redemption. For over 2 decades, he was trapped in a system that failed him, condemned for a crime he didn't commit. But through determination, the support of his family, the tireless efforts of advocates like Dan Slepian, and the power of the truth, Velazquez was finally able to reclaim his freedom. His story is a stark reminder of the flaws in our criminal justice system, but it's also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Today, Velazquez is more than just a man who was wrongfully imprisoned. He's a voice for those still trapped within the system, a beacon of hope for the wrongfully convicted, and an advocate for a more just and fair legal process. Jon-Adrian Velazquez's journey has been long, but it's far from over. His fight for justice continues as he works to reform the system that took so much from him. If you believe in his cause and want to hear more stories like his, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Whispers in the Dark, and hit the notification bell. Together, we can shine a light on the stories that need to be told.